Osu, Banner Hill, Latte, Enum, in Sabah, around 9 a.m. on the 1st of February 1938, the moderator, Right Reverend C.K. Matheson, and the synod clerk, Reverend D.E. Aqua, arrived. At exactly 10 a.m., with 3 masters and 10 students seated, the 2 officers of the church commenced the historic opening ceremony. The synod clerk conducted the opening service. The moderator delivered an exhortation, pronounced the benediction, and declared the school officially open with no fanfare. This was the day our school was founded. And as my co-host Zonda said, this was just on the 1st or 3 days ago. The school started with no teachers who were of very high educational background, like having attended University of London in those days, like Achimota and the other schools. But we had tutors who were dedicated, devoted to the cause. They made sacrifices. Reverend Engman taught about 5 subjects just to get things going. Now, other details will be provided by other seniors today, so let me just move on quickly. Our school has a motto, but before then, our crest is the St. Andrew's White Cross, together with the flag of the Swiss flag or the Basel Mission, because of the contributions of the 2 missions to our school. Our motto is In Lume to Videmimus Lumen, taken from Psalm 36, verse 9. In thy light, we shall see light. The same motto as Ivy League University, Columbia University. That is for the records. We have Father ỌDADEƐ as our icon. And the ỌDADEƐ, Father ỌDADEƐ was represented by the baobab tree, which stands for knowledge, resourcefulness, and strength. 2 years after the school was opened in 1940, our school anthem, Happy Are We, Students Are We, was written by J.L. Annan and came into being. The school expanded. Every Presbyterian wanted the son to be at Presec because we were doing very well. In fact, our first examinations we presented 9 students. 6 of them came out with grade 1s, which was very, very, very unusual, especially for a school that was so handicapped in terms of facilities. So right from the first group of people we presented for examination in 1941, the writing was on the wall that this school was going to make history. And we have lived to that expectation. But as the school expanded, there was the need for the school to be rehoused. And in 1948, 49, thereabout, the colonial government accepted that because of our performances, and an amount of £230,000 was devoted for the rehousing. But then the question, the contentious issue, the multi-million-dollar question, the $64 million question was, where do we go? Do we stay in Odumase or we come closer to Accra? 2 groups of people in the church. Others advocated that we get closer to Osu, and others said we should remain in Odumase. So we had 2 sites, Nuaso and Legon. Nuaso or Legon. The last 2, Labadi traditional area, gave us the present site at Legon. And the synod decided that the school should be rehoused at Legon. A British architect, S.G. Agroba, who were famous for designing schools in East Africa, South Africa, and England, were commissioned to start the construction at the new site. They started work And then there were payment issues, frustrations here and there. And then they packed their stuff and left back to England. Then Reverend Kwanzaa came in and went to meet the president of that time, Kwame Nkrumah, and made a passionate appeal for funding to get the school done. So a new contractor, Asona Construction, was re-awarded the contract. Asona Construction belongs to B.K. Edusei, who was one of the Kotoko guys in the Kotoko executives in the 70s or so, if you remember. But because the original plan, because of funding issues, the original plan was scaled down significantly. Certain facilities were removed completely from the drawings. And it was scaled down to what we had in 1968. Initially, 5 houses were built: Kwanzaa, Clark, Engman, and Akro, and Reese. And then later on in 1973, Labone House was built. And because Labone House was built, there was a reshuffle of students so that students were reallocated new halls 1973-74 academic year. Our postal address is P.O. Box 98, Legon, very, very famous. And our school has a sister school, Iburi Girls, but our old flame still remains Krobo Girls High School. So, Zonda, in the nutshell, this is just a brief history of our school, and I know there are so many parts. Reverend Hansre, Senior Herbert, and others who are online would also add flesh to it. So for the sake of time, I'll end my historical narration here. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Edifiko. That's been interesting, and we are going to come back to allow our guests to give us their personal experiences when they were at Odumasi. But before then, just this past Wednesday, Senior Samado, the global president, the headmaster, and some teachers, some old boys, and present-day students paid a visit to Krobo Odumasi. He's going to be telling us who were on that trip to visit the old Presec grounds and the significance of this visit. Senior Sam, please kindly recount our pilgrimage organized by the school to Odumasi.
Okay, so thank you very, very much, Zonda, Johnny. So on the 1st of February this year, which is like 2 days ago, the school headmaster, staff, and prefects, students who are basically prefects, non-teaching staff like the kitchen staff, all made plans to visit the Krobo Odumasi school site. I heard about it and I decided to drive in my own car to join the very, very important trip. Our global president, Dr. Ofori Sapong, and his team of executives also came along in their car. So it was basically the Presec school buses and 2 or 3 private cars that were tagging along. So we met in the morning here on the Presec campus near the assembly hall, and then we drove in a convoy to Odumasi. This was the first time that I'd actually been on that campus. I'd driven through Odumasi to Akosombo and other areas. So we arrived and were received very warmly by a group of traditional drummers that were sent by Nene Sakite, who's the Kono. Nene Sakite, incidentally, is an ỌDADEƐ, an old student. He was not personally available on that day, so he sent a representative, one of his sub-chiefs, who is also an ỌDADEƐ, to grace the occasion. So we all disembarked from our vehicles and we followed the drummers into the school campus. I was very struck by what I saw. I mean, apparently the campus has been improved a lot since when it was originally the Presec school grounds. The central courtyard has been paved. There was a place called the Upper Arena and then the Lower Arena. Upper Arena was very nicely paved with pavement blocks. The school basically had a couple of buildings in a quadrangle around the compound. The buildings were all made of wood. And so both lower and upper floors were made of wood. There was an ỌDADEƐ, I think 1955, a lawyer, English trained, British trained lawyer, who was part of the program. And he basically told us about what each of those buildings represented. So basically the like Form 1 slept in one of the lower floor rooms. And then, and Reverend Ansre can correct me since he was actually there at the time. But either the students were upstairs having classes, the classrooms were upstairs, and the students slept downstairs in the same physical building. So the ground floor was the dorms, and then the upper floors were the classrooms, or the other way around. So it was a very humbling experience just to know that the school has such humble beginnings, and through providence and through the vision that was created by Reverend Engman, Clufio, and Dacha and others, Presec has now assumed stratospheric heights. So the story that is to be told is that it's always sweeter when you come from the lowest of the valleys and you rise to the highest mountain. If you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth and you had all the advantages of life and you later on became successful, that is not a story. The story is if you are born in privation, if you are born in difficult circumstances, if you are born with nothing, and then you become somebody. That is a story to be told. So as I was just looking over, and incidentally, 3 of my uncles, including 2 senior prefects, were on that same campus, walked on that same campus, slept in those buildings. And so I have a direct connection through my blood relatives who actually walked on that campus. So I was very much moved to see very, very humble beginnings. A lot of stories were being told, and an anecdote that really caught my attention was that the students maybe every other day had to walk from that Odumase campus to Bong to fetch water, and because of the acute water shortage in the Krobo Odumase area. And I asked a lawyer now, so what was the distance that they had to walk, or they had to traverse? And he indicated that it was approximately 10 kilometers one way. Somebody drew our attention to the fact that 10 kilometers or maybe 10 miles in those days would be the distance from Accra to Ridge Hospital. From Legon campus, Presec campus to Ridge Hospital. That was the distance that these 14, 15-year-old boys had to walk just to get water. And then when they got to Bong, according to the seniors, they actually had to do their laundry. They had to wash their clothes, maybe sometimes take a bath over there. I'm not sure. And I think other seniors can tell us exactly what they did when they got to Bong. But then they also had to fetch water to bring back to the Odumase campus for personal consumption, and then also to provide the kitchen with the water that would be used for cooking. So maybe each student had to make either one trip or 2 trips, or had to carry multiple buckets of water. So it was really hard. It was hard times. And through all of these hardships, prominent people, former head of state, Reverend Professor Ansre, my uncle, Osiadio Adodankwa, and others have passed through and assumed prominence in society. And it was a very, very good trip. I think Presbyterian representative who represented the moderator made a couple of requests to our global president. And I think the first, and to the headmaster to the school. So the first of the requests was that this trip should be annualized. It should be institutionalized as an annual trip, because the students, the young students and the prefects who went on this pilgrimage should really see where this story about Presec all began, and that would shape their lives and shape their mindsets and shape their future. So that trip really was impactful on the young people who attended, and we the moderators rep suggested that this should become an annual event. The second request was that the current campus, the current Odumase campus, should be maybe converted into like a Presec, like kind of a museum, kind of facility that would preserve the story of Presec. Yeah, and I think there was a third request which has escaped me, but basically this trip to Odumase, according to the headmaster is David Ojija, who is also from Odumase, Krobo Odumase. This trip will become annual. Every year, first of February or thereabouts, a delegation from Presec will be visiting the Odumase campus just to tap into our source and to see where we're coming from, because it's always good to know where you're coming from to determine where you're going. Yeah, so Johnny, so I don't want to take too much time, but this trip was very, very successful. We had lunch in the dining hall. I think the dining hall at that time doubled as the assembly hall as well. So we had lunch, and it was a very, very resounding success. And I'm very, very glad I spent my 1st of February on Wednesday tagging along on my own volition to join the school to visit the source of our school, and a school where my relatives had all attended. So thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Senior Sam. That was something. I mean, I have been to those grounds a couple of times. I didn't go to visit as a pilgrimage. I went for a funeral, but then I took the opportunity to look around. And what struck me was how small the compound was, and to think that people walked 10 kilometers away. And Togo, I think Thomas Answer is here with me as well. When we came to Form 1, we were just walking to science school, and we were crying. Yeah. And then Legon, we thought Legon was the West.
Rich hospital.
You know, and so can you imagine how, if people walked 10 kilometers, you know, just to go and fetch water? That's something else. Today, I don't know what the kids would say.
I tell you.
Yes. Okay, so let me acknowledge one senior old boy. He's in the person of Senior Akute Azu. If he's online, can we hear his voice? Hello, Senior Akute Azu. Can you hear us?
Yes, sir. I am here. Good evening to you all, to all my senior and fellow ОДАДЕЭs.
Yes. What year?
I am ОДАДЕЭ 1986.
Oh, you are a small boy. You are a small boy, crowd.
I thought your dad was the one coming.
I was told that he will be called to join.
Oh, you will call him. Okay, we'll call him. We'll call your dad.
Apparently, I
call your dad.
him. It was better.
Yeah. So okay. But
this
good to see you.
This boy has spoiled everything, crowd. Because I thought myself, Fico, and Thomas were the young people in this whole program.
This
has spoiled it for us. Has got to spoil it for us.
His father will speak before him. Don't worry. His father will security comes today. His father will speak before him. So let's go on doing that.
Okay, so yeah,
but we'll give him a chance to talk. He has a rich story to tell us. Okay. So but we'll come to him.
Let's take a short break. When we come back, we shall come to our guests in the studio.
Janum ebibrime, ye. Janum ebibrime, ye. Munjri muwo, yere no gara. Munjri muwo, yere no para. Enimwase fata bibrimo.
ỌDADEƐ Radio.
All right, thank you, and welcome back. If you want to join our discussions, you can join us live on our streaming links on YouTube at ỌDADEƐ Radio and Facebook at ỌDADEƐ Radio. If you want to send your questions and comments, please use our social media handles: Twitter at ỌDADEƐ Radio, Instagram at ỌDADEƐ Radio, Facebook at ỌDADEƐ Radio, and WhatsApp on 2092-92-5. We shall open the phone lines at some point, and if you want to phone in and make a contribution, you can do so. We will now allow some of our senior old students who were part of the old school in Odumasi to give a narration of their experiences. And I would like to start with you, Reverend Professor Ansre. Can you recount some of your experiences when you were in Odumasi, and in particular, maybe some incidents that have stuck in your mind?
Thank you very much. I went to Presec in February 1946. There had been a few people before our time, but the tradition of being a very Presbyterian and hard-working institution had been actually set around that time before I had gone. Because of lack of water, the school's opening was delayed from late January to early February. Actually, I had not realized that the school actually started on the 1st of February in 1938. But I was very gratified for personal reasons. I was born on the 1st of February, 1930. So I was just 17 when I went to school in Presec. A few of us in that year went to Presec by accident. We had taken the entrance examination to go to be teacher catechists in Akropong. And for some reason, Akropong decided that in a few years' time, they were going to start post-secondary school teacher training courses. So they bundled 10 of us, gave us a scholarship to go to Presec for 4 years, not 5, and then to come to Akropong. That's how I went to Presec, but I feel extremely gratified for having had this opportunity. When we went, the war, Second World War had just been completed, and in fact, while we were there, soldiers of the Royal African Frontier Force were being demobilized and sent home, and they would come through Odumasi either from Kofodia and Asasewa area or from Accra. Kubo was a very famous place at the time because because the Nene of Krobo was one of the few British knights who were paramount chiefs. Another one was Nana Prempe of Asante and Nana Oforiata of Akim. Those were the three British knights who were paramount chiefs, and Odumasi was the center of the Krobo traditional area. Well, when we went, there were, as you had said, Mr. Ado had said, there was a big, long bungalow, wooden bungalow, which actually was built by Timmerman. Timmerman was one of the first very hardworking and ambitious Basel missionaries. He lived in Accra for some time and took a great part in the Ghana Bible translation, but he settled in Odumase and did a lot of research in the Dangbe language as well. And he built this very long bungalow and near the Odumase Krobo chapel. It was very significant because the tower and the cross of the Krobo, Odumase Krobo chapel was actually on the Greenwich, the meridian of Greenwich line. So if I were a pilot, I would take off from Accra, go to Tema, head for Odumase, head for Nairobi, and I would get into London. Anyway, most of us had come from boarding senior schools and were already boarding school people who knew how to struggle to live, to get water, to do some cooking, to weed, to sweep, to clean up, and so on. So it was not, actually I had to walk from Raura in the Boem district to Jasikang, which was 12 miles, in order to get into a car to come to Presec.
Hey.
So it was not so much, and we carried our luggage as well. So it sounds strange these days,
Yes.
but it was common to go and fetch your own water. But the school system was very nice for us who had been through the Presbyterian boarding school system. You woke up at 5:30 in the morning. You quickly cleaned up and swept the compound and places allotted to you, and you were ready by 7:30 to have breakfast. If you were fast enough, you will have about 30 minutes or so to do a little studying on your own. Then breakfast, after breakfast would be the early morning service before classes. Classes would begin at 8 and end about 12:30. You had lunch and a little break. 2:30 you are back in school, and 4:30, 4 o'clock or 4:30, the afternoon class was over and the evening activities took place. The one thing that was very interesting about our teachers were that they themselves were not degree holders. Actually, it was when I got to Form 5 that I had the first degree teacher in my class, Mr. Agbito, who was a classicist and a Greek and Latin scholar. And not long after, Mr. Jones arrived from the UK, who had a bachelor degree. The rest were people who had school certificate or London matriculations and were struggling hard to do their intermediate on their own, or to struggle to get some scholarship to go to Britain and other places. So the staff itself was so hardworking, but they actually struggled for themselves as well as for us. And so the multiples of teachers we had about 10 or 12 teachers at the time, and the school itself was about 150 or so, 25 in each class. And competition in classes were very tough. They had a system where the first 25 were put in one class, and then the following year, if you were in the last 5, you would be taken to B class, and if you were in the first 5, you would be taken to the A class. So it was a struggle to stay in the A class. One thing we were fortunate about was that after 2 years in the school, the University of the Gold Coast, the University College of the Gold Coast, was started. And I was then in about Form 3 going to Form 4, and suddenly it became clear that if you struggled hard enough and were able to pass your school certificate and your London matriculation, or you could go into university. And that was a very, very strong motive for very many people in Presec at the time. So very many of us in our class of about 50, close to 35, 40, were qualified to go to university by the time we finished. Wow. And some went directly because they were not bonded to go elsewhere. Some of us who were bonded to go to train as teachers went to teach, to train as teachers, and then were able to go to university. The teachers were very meticulous. Some were very funny. I'm sure that Presec should never forget Mr. Kojo Anum, who probably taught some of you, but he taught us as well. He was a great man. A lot of insult and abuse, but at the same time, he made you work. At the time I went, Mr. Engman had a scholarship to go to Britain to study for his degree work. So he was not the principal, but Mr. Clufio was the acting principal. And it was in 1948-49 that Mr. Engman returned, and that was when Mr. Clufio went to do his degree. And then there were other ones, Mr. Jones, Mr. The man who composed the national anthem.
J.L. Annan.
Mr. Annan was a great geographer, and he, they had motive and they had effort. When he said, we are training to take our place in the future of our country and land, he meant it. And there was a great motivation in Presec to make a place for yourself in your country and your church. So the two important motives to be enlightened so that you can shine out, in lumine tuo, by which we mean in your light, in God's light, we would be able to see light and brighten other people. So the sense of service to church and state was much stronger than I think it is in modern secondary school thinking and work. Also, the important thing when it came to sports, then if you were ỌDADEƐ, if you were in Presec, you had to win. If you didn't win, that was a shame. And some of us played a lot of sports. I am of small stature, but I played football a lot with Afarijan, Nana Adodankwa. I played volley because I could jump high and I could spike hard. By some accident, I was sports captain of House 2, and when we were really getting ready to do our athletic season, it was clear to me that the sprinters were not sprinting well enough, and I went to try it and I beat them all, and so I got into athletics by accident. So, but once you were there, you had to win, and I hope that this has continued to be one of the important things. Accomplishment, to be able to do what you are doing very, very excellently well, not finish it just, but to accomplish it, to finish it satisfactorily, has been one of the major ambitions of Presec, and it comes out very clearly in many of the ỌDADEÄs who have been serving in various places, to my knowledge. I don't know what you would like me to say.
Well, Prof, I think I'll come back to you. I have some questions for you, but there are some other seniors on the line which will quickly also like them to tell their story or what they remember, and then we'll come back to you. So I think that we have a new senior old boy on the line, Professor Wosonu. Prof, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Oh, sorry.
Don't worry. Prof Wosonu, can you hear me? Hello, Prof. So I think Prof, is he muted? Okay. So let's go to
Prof is on.
yeah, but he can't hear us.
He's hearing us, Prof. Yeah, Prof is here.
Prof,
is on the
Prof,
Zoom.
can you hear us? Can you introduce yourself and your year?
Yes, my name is Professor ОДАДЕː Wosonu. The year was prehistoric, 1955. Yes, I'm doing that. I'm introducing myself now.
Yeah. Okay, so Prof, can you recount some of the memories you have whilst you were in Krobo Dumasi? Just a brief, recount.
Yes, I know. I've listened very attentively to the history that was narrated, and also the experiences that were specified, including the difficulties you had getting water from Pong and so on. So all that, of course, one can only say, yes, I agree entirely with that. But let me just add two more things about the characters of the teachers who made us, by the grace of God, who we are. It is true that I was interviewed by one at the end of one of those senators. I was omitted, even though this happened in government school in Accra. I was in an Adam Presby school at that time, and I came for the interview. At about 12 midday, he was packing his bag and was leaving. So you can imagine this skinny walked up to the headmaster and told him, "Sir, I'm not big." And he said, "I beg your pardon?" I said, "No, sir, I was not late." "So really?" I said, "Yes, sir." I said, "Very well, my son, very well, my child. Come, let me interview you." Now, it was that degree of compassion that they had for us. He didn't lose his temper that I'd missed my chance, no, but he was there and gave me time and I was interviewed. And then as by the grace of God, I got half a scholarship. I was admitted. And by the time I left in 1955, by the grace of God again, I was made the senior prefect for that particular group. The other teachers, Jones was mentioned, was teaching physics at that time. Nyakon was teaching us maths, and so on. They were methodical in their approach because they were trained teachers, very methodical. And they insisted on presentation. It is not enough that you should write neatly. It is important that you must write presentably. You presented your essays as a work of art. Now, I found that approach very helpful the rest of my life. So it's not enough just to present what I like to present, but present it artfully. That's what one thing that we learned from Presec. The other thing we learned was that, as was mentioned by one of my classmates, Anwan Laye, Ambassador Laye of the blessed memory. He wrote a beautiful, essay about that. Very few words indicating that if we are not strong, you would have been weak. But because we were toughened, we were able to survive hardships in life later on. We are laughed at when we went to secondary school elsewhere, for example, St. Augustine, Achmota, Prempeh, and all that, because we did not have the sixth form at that time, but somehow we managed to do our best with them. Let me leave it like that for the time being. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Professor Osonu, for the brief recount of what you remember when you were at Krobo Dumasi. At this time, I just want us to see whether I'm coming back to Professor Ansre. And my question is, when you talked about some of your teachers who were not trained teachers.
No, most of them were trained teachers.
But they are not going to the university.
But they had no university education yet.
Okay.
And their own ambition was also to go to university. So they would study their subjects well and come and teach it to us as they studied. Okay. And actually, I had the good fortune of being in the same class with some of them when we went to university.
Oh.
And so they were very good friends, and you were a little shy to be in the class. They were a little older, very mature, but a number of my university mates were my teachers in secondary school.
Wow. That's
yeah, Prof. Just a quick one as a follow-up. Who were some of your mates, Prof. Ansre, your mates?
Yes, my mates included Nicholas Clark, Dr. Nicholas Clark, if you remember him, Dr. Frimpong Ansa, Bank of Ghana governor, Antison, Dr. Antison, medical man, Samuel Aferi, head teacher, and Osai. Actually, I know one of them, Osai, who is alive. He lives in Anum, a few years older than I am, but he was my classmate, and he studied classics, and he had extreme retentive memory. Maybe I should say that when we were finishing, he decided that he went to teacher training college as the rest of us. But while he was there, alongside with 3 or 4 others, they did their intermediate bachelor degrees while we were in the teacher training college. And our son was doing classics, and he had to study a Greek text. And a friend of mine who had the English script lived in Mamfi, shall be nameless. He did not like to part of his Greek script, so he, as Osanyao begged him to have it for the day. Osany took it, went to the Latter Junction. There was I can still see that cassava farm. He went into it and spent about 4 hours just there, and he had committed the whole crib into memory. He went straight away and passed his classical Greek degree, intermediate degree, much to the consternation of one of our teachers, who was also in the same course but did not quite pass. So,
Okay, Prof, and you had Professor Christian Gaba
I had Christian
and
Gaba.
Dr. Hesse as your mates.
Dr. Hesse was my mate, and who
Christian
else?
Gaba,
Christian Gaba,
Akoto,
he became
Uredu,
a famous.
Uredu.
Uredu was a year ahead of us.
Oh, okay.
Dr. Uredu was a year ahead of us.
And you said some time back that Mr. Jampo Mathematics,
yes, Mr. Jampo,
Dokusi Science,
yes,
Dokusi Science teacher,
yes, Mr.
and Mr. Anum English teacher were your
Anum
favorite tutors in
English
Presec.
teacher, Mr. Jones. Actually, then the intermediate people who had done the intermediate in Achimota and were waiting for scholarship to go abroad began to come, including Mr. Data, who became the headmaster later on, Mr. Fiegbo, and quite important personages who were Tagboto, for example, became a very famous surgeon and doctor. So that was how things went for
Prof,
many of us.
we'll come back to you. We have another senior citizen on the line, ỌDADEƐ lawyer, Na, 1956. Lawyer Na, can you hear us? Hello, Lawyer Na. Can you hear us? Yes, you are welcome to ỌDADEƐ Radio.
Hello?
Hello, Dr. Lawyer Na, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yes, I say you are welcome to ỌDADEƐ Radio.
Thank you, thank
Yes,
you, thank you.
So,
It's a great delight
yes,
to
we
be
are.
on the line of ỌDADEƐ Group.
Yes, we are discussing ỌDADEƐ at 85, and we
Yes.
would like for you to share with us your some of your experiences when you were in Odumasi.
I beg your pardon, I can't hear you well.
I'm saying that we are discussing ỌDADEƐ at 85,
Yes.
and we would like you to share some of your experiences with us when you were at Krobo Odumasi.
Uh-huh. Yes, are you there?
Yes, we are here. We can hear you.
Yes, yes. Well, we left ỌDADEƐ in 1956, and at the time we had only, as I was saying the other day, only two graduate teachers, including the headmaster and later on Mr. Jones came in, and Jones was the maths and science master, and the whole school, the strength of the school was, I don't think more than 150, because we had only one stream each at the time, and we had, as you know, the big ỌDADEƐ tree planted in the middle of the compound, and in the compound we have two, we call them arenas, the lower arena and then the upper arena. The upper arena accommodates houses 1 and 2, and including the house masters, and forms 4 and 5 classrooms. On the lower arena, a much larger place that contains the headmaster's office, Mr. J. Kurufi's office, then the first floor, the forms 2 and 3 classrooms, And then you have also the staff common room. We have also the extreme end on the first floor. We have housemaster's apartment. On the ground floor, you have houses 3 and 4. Just next to them, towards the southern part of it, we have 2 dining halls, the big one and the small one. But the hallmark of Presec success still hinges on the fact that we're trained Christians. Discipline was a hallmark of Presec, because we from 2 boys owe allegiance to Form 3, Form 4, and Form 5, and the masters. And it is also significant to note that if you disobey instructions or the rules, you are punished, and your parents will even come to the school and order the teachers to cane you. So discipline, and that's why I would say Presbyterianism, the thing where you go, you come out, you're never a dropper. You never a dropper. Ask why we have a small science room, a very small, like a room, about 20 by 20. But then, when we left Presec, some of them became prefects at Ashimata, at this school, and the rest. So I'm saying this afternoon, to the glory of God, that the Presec training is so paramount, so basic to anybody who wants to grow in life. And I'll urge and I'll pray that our present crop, we saw them the other day, they were decently dressed, they tuck in their shirts, no artificial dresses, which is highly commendable. We pray and continue to pray that all the teachers, most of them also are Presbyterians. Some testify that they were in other faiths, but when they joined Presec as teachers, they were compelled to convert into Presbyterianism. I say this to the glory of God, that we pray that we grow from strength to strength, from strength to strength, and even at governmental levels, we're beginning to see Presbyterians. I also say that we were there with Fred Akufo, General Akufo, who became head of state some time past. And it is a joy, a big joy to say that you have people like Fred and the rest passing to Presec, and they give a credible evidence of their lives. I think this is why I want to say, except you want to ask questions.
Yes, I wanted to ask you if you remember some of your mates. You mentioned General Kufu. Are there any others that you remember?
Like?
Your classmates.
And you are?
I'm asking about your classmates. Are there any of them that you remember? You just
the class prefect.
No, classmates. Your classmates.
You have I don't know where. So Anton Wilson, Mante, and ahead of that were Wosonu, Osezab, yes, they were 55 group I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And it's part almost 70 years. It's not easy to collect it more now.
That's true. All right. All right. Thank you very much, lawyer. Now, I'll come back to you in a minute, but I want to also ask Professor Usono if he remembers any of his classmates.
Who?
Yes, I do indeed. I was mentioning, with your permission, Jeremy Jangba, who was Jangba, yes. And I also mentioned Ambassador Laye, of the Sun Memory.
Yes.
Yeah, dear Laye, yes.
He was in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Everyone, Samina.
More
Oh, very good.
Nice one.
Wanamasi. Yes. Oh, very well. Yeah. Actually, talking about the discipline. Next time I have an opportunity, I'll share with you this poem about Presec, and the topic about is surely order amplifies beauty. She breathes the neat, the Spartan, and the disciplined. Fearing God and loving teachers, elders state, bees by instinct and tigers by training, her sons seek that rare blend of the elements, to be supremely capable by silent, like deep currents in the unmapped water. We were very competent, but very silent. Thank you very much indeed.
Wow, beautiful. That's beautiful.
Okay, Prof. Prof. Before you sign off, when you talk of Jangba, are you referring to Professor Jangba, who became Director General of the Ghana Education Service and then Vice Chancellor, Pro-Vice at University of Cape Coast?
Absolutely, he's the one. He's the one. He's the one. The four of us went to St. Augustine's. Jerry Jangba, myself, and Yabua, and then also Osez Abdiel. We were mocked when you got there by the St. Augustine's students that we didn't have test tubes in our labs. We didn't have what uniforms were. But the teacher who was there, he warned them to be very careful. These are from Presec. They can be very good. The rest is history.
Yes. Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Prof. The rest is history. We know that the rest is history. And Prof, before you talk of Yeboah, you talk of Jacob Eugene Yeboah,
yes,
the financial guru.
No, Yeboah. Hang on. I don't recall what he did because I grew wings shortly after I went to university in Glasgow. It was good that you were mentioning that the Scottish missionaries came in and got things started, even though they did so reluctantly. And I remember in the poem I wrote again for teachers, they kicked against the goad. The names that were mentioned, they decided we needed to have a secondary school, come forth May, and they did. They were convinced it was necessary. They sacrificed a lot for it and made it happen. We owe them a lot. Thank you very much.
All right. That was Professor Awosonu, yes.
Yes, like Awosonu, yes.
Eric, this is Eric now.
Yeah,
he can hear you very clearly
on the radio, on the video.
Yes. All right. So thank you very much, Lawyer Na, 1956, and Professor Awosonu. You can still stay with us and listen to us. Later on, when it comes to the question time, I want to ask you some more questions. But we have on Zoom Senior Dodu. If Senior Dodu can hear me, can you kindly introduce yourself and tell us some of?
Can you unmute? Senior Dodu, can you unmute? Senior Dodu, can you unmute? You are muted. Yes, okay. Yeah. Senior Dodu.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes.
We want to ask you about your experiences. Can you share with us some of your experiences?
Yes, I'm Herbert Oswald, Dodu, 1968 year group. We arrived in Odumase in 1973 when Reverend Kufi was the headmaster. But we had heard so much about the school. 1963, we arrived in the school in 1963 when Reverend Kufi was the headmaster. The hopes were very high when we wrote the common entrance. We were expecting to see schools, Presec like any other school, like at one time the Pants Teams and the other school. But we got there and we saw these dilapidated buildings, and for a while we lost hope. But the good thing is that Reverend Kufi was around to pep us up, and within a week or two, we all fell in line and we carried on. I must say that the discipline was so high that even boys who we could describe as bad boys in their middle schools and that kind of thing, changed within the very shortest time. Within a month or so, everybody was behaving well. I must say that the masters were prepared to sacrifice their all to ensure that we were on track, both academically and morally. During our time, the intercore brigade activities were so high. I remember a year before we even got to Presec, I had watched or witnessed the intercollegiate athletics competition at Dakar Sports Stadium, where Presec took 5 gold medals. And I remember those athletes. I think JC Amui got javelin, discus, shot put, gold medals in the 3 events. Mate Boucher took the hurdles and then hop, step, and jump. And then they finish it up with the 110 by 4, now 100 meters by 4. I also recall that Ohinija, the then director of sports, wanted to use the tune of the school anthem as the anthem for the intercollegiate athletics activities. Even though the buildings were dilapidated, we managed to stay there. But the problem we had was that the masters that were brought in, after 1 year, they leave. A master comes 1 year, he leaves. In some cases, some stayed just for a term or 2. And, teaching, there wasn't a continuous type of teaching. Once master starts, somewhere down the line, he moves to another school, another master comes mid-term to continue. And therefore, those were the problems we had those days. Accommodation too was a problem. Some of us stayed in rented accommodation in town, which were referred to as extension. I recall that at the close of the day, some of us had to walk about 2 miles away from the school to go and sleep in town. And at a stage, we were not even sure whether we were in the boarding house or in town. Some of the masters were living in town, in Odumase. There were some who were in Somanya, and they had to commute between Somanya and Odumase every day. And I recall that things got worse. And at the stage, we had a demonstration. That was in the 1965-66 academic year. The school was closed down. There was a committee of inquiry that was set up to look into the disturbances. And there was a recommendation that we should, as early as possible, move to those sites. And I can say, without any contradiction, that demonstration, even though it wasn't a good thing as far as the Ministry of Education was concerned, to us, it marks the beginning and push forward the agenda to move from Odumase to Legon. We saw the place, but we never set foot there. And we refer to our group as the last of the ancient. That is the 1968 year group. And like earlier speaker said, there were some dedicated teachers who would like to mention, like Ike Anu, Mr. I'm not getting some of the names, but I hope to mention the names later.
Don't worry.
Did so well,
Don't worry about
sacrificed everything.
Can you
They
tell us
sacrifice
some of your
everything
mates?
to ensure my mate with some kitchen, Daniel, Owusu, Asite, Olenu, Ose Tutu, Asite Laye, Wilfred Akpedono, Dr. Wilfred Akpedono, the late Wilfred Akpedono, a medical officer at University of Ghana, Japasu, with whom I played hockey together. Ajete Ajay and Obesi. These are the names I can readily recollect.
Okay, so a quick question for you. You mentioned a demonstration
Okay.
prior to the relocation, and there was a closure of the school.
Yes.
And you said there was an inquiry, and it led to the fast tracking of the school moving to Presec. I read somewhere that there was a field trip organized by the headmaster. Were you part of that group that went to see the new campus?
No, but whilst we were at school, whilst we were at Odumase, once a while, we went to the school to weed.
Oh. Oh, I see. So you went to the promised land, but...
Yes, we went to the promised land to weed, but never slept there.
This is wicked. I see. So you all saw the excellent facilities that were being prepared for the next batch of students.
In fact, some of us had wished that we had stayed, we had delayed our passing out.
I see. Very interesting. I actually like your alumni shirt and then your cloth, behind.
My background.
Yes, your background. Very, very nice.
Yes, I've been so much involved with the ÖDADEÄ activities.
Okay.
And for 10 years between the Golden Jubilee and then the 60th anniversary, I was the treasurer, financial secretary.
Wow. Well, thank you very much for your service, and we hope that you continue to follow ÖDADEÄ in all its undertakings, because once an ÖDADEÄ, it's for life.
Always ÖDADEÄ.
Always
Yes.
ÖDADEÄ. Okay, so I think that we would come to another senior ÖDADEÄ we have on the line. Joseph, are we ready? And who are we talking to? Hello? Oh, okay. So we've lost him. Okay, so let's come back to some of the guests that we have and the role of some of our headmasters, former headmasters. We mentioned Reverend Engman, we mentioned Reverend Kufio, we mentioned Reverend Dacha. And I get sometimes a little confused about the different times that they were on. But it appears as if the longest serving was Dacha. Professor Ansre.
Actually, it could be rather Reverend Clufio, because when work started, Mr. Engman was headmaster from beginning to about 1945 or so. That is to say, from 1938 to 45. You could calculate the numbers for me. Then Mr. Clufio became assistant headmaster till Mr. Engman returned. Mr. Engman returned about 1948-49. Then Clufio went to England, came back, and was principal until Mr. Datta's time. I don't recall exactly when Mr. Datta took over. but he had been a teacher in Mauli School before, and for CPP and bloody reasons, had to leave and went to Teshi Secondary School to begin with, before he was appointed formally to Presec. But it was during his time that the agitation to move to Legon was very strong, and he championed it. And when he came, he continued to be headmaster for some time. So and Mr. Datsa had come to teach as a young teacher before he went to study for his degree much earlier in the 1947-48. So I do not know exactly who stayed the longest, but each one had his own mark, which they left indelibly on the life of the school. So,
All right, thank you very much. We have Mr. Gustav Mate Azu on the phone now. Good evening, Mr. Azu. Hello, good evening, Mr. Azu.
Hello.
Yes, can you hear me?
Hello.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, so you are welcome to ОДАДЕƐ Radio, and we are discussing Presec at 85. And we wanted you to share some of your experiences when you were in Udumasi at the old school.
Oh, yes.
So can you kindly tell us the year you were there, and then tell us some of the things you recollect when you were there?
Oh, I entered in 1954 and passed out in 1958.
Okay. Any memories, any recollections of?
Very pleasant memories. The teachers I remember very clearly were Mr. Piagbo, who taught history, Mr. Mante, who taught English, Mr. Boating, music, Bampo Kwache, he later became the Vice Chancellor, Kwame Nkrumah University, Tech and Technology. Bampo Kwache, Boating, Mr. Mante, these were dedicated teachers who spent their time, private time, to give us extra lessons for free. Absolutely free. They were proud of the results of their students, and that was their joy. They didn't take a penny. Their spare time, between 2 and 4 o'clock, before we had our games, they would offer their services: history, English, literature, science, and the results were also very good. Reverend Clufio was the headmaster, and he was very strict as regards to the performance of the teachers. There was this elderly man who was speaking Latin. I've forgotten the name. It will come. He was the assistant headmaster. But the common quality was dedication, taking pride in the results of the students, and we didn't leave out sports. In spite of the limited resources, we performed very, very well at athletics. I remember was it 1958 at the Transport Stadium when we were head-to-head with Achimota and Abuakwa State College, and we're doing the last relay, sprint relay. Whoever won, but the order of the results would determine who was first, who was second, and who was third. The relay, the sprint relay, Achimota won by a nose. We were second, and Abuakwa was third, and that was the outcome of the whole competition. But what was most impressive during our time was the dedication of the teachers who spent their private time, to give us extra lessons. And I think in our time, the results were excellent. Excellent.
Yeah, I'm here. Do you remember any of your classmates?
Oh, yes.
Can you mention a few for us, please?
Oh, Dr. Fred Akufo, University of Science and Technology. His younger brother, another Fred Akufo, he had his private clinic in Tema. He's passed. I think Fred has retired from tech, but he's the last time, maybe several years ago, when I spoke with him, he was doing solar panels. He had built his house near tech, and he was doing manufacturing solar panels. Seto Tute, a lawyer, Seth Kumi, he became, I can't say the head, but he was in the high echelons of the Methodist Church. Kumi, Gustav, he became a magistrate. Oh, what's his surname? Seto Tute, Dawson, an architect, is passed. Seth Kofi, an architect, is passed away.
That's
a good crowd.
Yeah, that is fine. I mean, because of time, I think that the few you have mentioned will do. Please continue to stay on and listen to some of the other people who are online waiting to talk about their experiences. Thank you very much, Mr. Azu. Senior Sam, so we've talked a lot about the old Presec, and I just want to ask about the Promised Land. This Presec.
Yes.
I think that you guys came what year?
1971.
1971.
So the school was just 3 years old on this campus. Yes.
Can you just give us a quick overview of how you saw it when you came to Form 1? We'll get some other people to talk a little bit about, but you just give us a quick overview of what you.
Sure. So, as you can imagine, the school was just 3 years old, so the facilities were brand new. All the utilities were working. Water was flowing abundantly. Some of our seniors that we met had actually straddled between Odumasi and the new campus. And one of the interesting tidbits was in Odumasi, the water was precious commodity. It wasn't abundant. So the students from Odumasi who are transitioned to Legon could stay under a shower for like 2 hours.
Hey.
Just trying to, because the water was free and flowing, and they had really never had, really a good bath. So the campus was nice. I think the total school population was about 800.
Who was your headmaster?
Headmaster was Dacha.
Dacha, okay. Yes.
Dacha was the headmaster. He was a quintessential gentleman. He cared for his boys. He made sure that the teachers applied themselves and did what they were supposed to do for us. At the Legon campus, we had several graduate teachers, notably Mrs. Jackson, who was a history teacher. I think Mrs. Achampong joined later. Mrs. Achampong, she passed away. She was the wife of Professor Achampong at Legon. Mr. Piedu, Mr. Klaye, those were some of the graduate teachers that were dedicated. Mr. Ojija, Mr. Dagadu, he taught biology. Mr. Dagadu ỌDADEƐ from Odumasi, a graduate teacher. He taught biology for several years at the Legon campus. So memories here were very, very fond memories. A lot of friendships built. As I said, our facilities, lights were always on, so we could study anytime we wanted at night. The food was good. I think our kitchen had ultra modern equipment, so food was sumptuous. I think the only drawback was the campus was relatively new, so there was a lot of grass. It was a weedy campus, and there were a lot of snakes, because this was a place where humans had not been very much present, and so the natural wildlife was yet to be driven away. Yeah, so one of the things, I think maybe in 1973, when we had Operation Feed Yourself, and that was a government policy under General Achampong, and we all had to have farms. We all had to grow corn and all that. And in one of the far places, farther away from the classroom blocks, we were assigned to go there and create a farm and plant corn. And as we were weeding, we saw the biggest snake I've ever seen in my life. I mean, it was like more than maybe about 12 feet long. I mean, a big cobra or whatever type of snake it was. And one of my classmates, whose name I would not mention, actually I think fainted. Hey. Just seeing a snake that big. Yeah, so the campus was we're coexisting with wildlife at some point. Yeah, but soon after that, because of the noise and human activity, the wildlife were driven further out.
But let me ask you, what was the experience like with those who had come from Odumasi? You met some of them, as you
Yes,
said.
I did. Yes.
And how did they relate to you guys? Who had come in here? And I believe there was no sixth form at the time.
No, it was just 1 to 5. Yes.
How did you relate to them? So you guys had come from one and joined them who had come from Odumasi as your seniors.
Yes.
How did they relate to you guys?
I think they were odd. I mean, they were like really grateful to be in such an environment because of where they were coming from. And after having visited Odumasi myself, I can see why they were so grateful. I mean, we had pavements, and it was a modern school. Yeah, population was small, so the equipment, the facilities were not stretched, and everything was working. The WCs, the toilets were flushing. We even had a waste treatment plant at the school farm where all the toilet was channeled, and that waste was used for agricultural purposes. Yeah, so the students that we met here that had come from Odumasi they were nice to us, but I could tell that they were in heaven. I mean, they had come from very humble and Spartan circumstances, and they were very grateful to be with us. So, yeah,
I want to
that's what I
invite
recall.
another senior who didn't come to 1 to 5, but came to 6th form when it was new. And so we have on the line Senior Kweku Coleman, 76. Senior Coleman, can you hear me? Hello, Senior Coleman, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. So we just want you to give us a quick recount of your experience in Presec 6th form as you had come as part of the new students, and how you came to be here in the 6th form Science College. Can you give us a brief history of that?
Yeah. Thanks for inviting me onto your show. I went to ÅDADEƐ College from 1 to 5, and I read science in ÅDADEƐ College. So I wanted to continue my A-levels science, but I couldn't get a good grade in chemistry. So I couldn't go back to ÅDADEƐ College. So I had to do what we used to call Second World War at Makers College. Now I was doing this.
Having some very terrible feedback, Sinakoli. Sinakoman. We'd have to call him back because we seem to have. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, okay. So we're getting some feedback. Please go ahead.
Feedback.
So, it's all right. You go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, when we were about to select our 6th form, at Makers College, then we learned that the government had introduced a new science college on the premises. Science college was to take the form of only science students, those who are ready to do biology, those who are ready to do mathematics. So I had a discussion with my father. He said, look, it's also a college. It's also a college, like at ÅDADEƐ College. So go to that science college. Brilliant idea. So I applied to the 6th form Science College. So we became the pioneers of the Science College in 1975. The Science College was established with an administration that was headed by Professor May, the head of the Atomic Energy Commission at Kwabenya at the time, a great British physicist, atomic physicist. And the story he told us was that the Nelson and Parker physics books that we use, Nelson and Parker were his students. So we had found a great physicist to teach us physics. And he was the head of Presec. At the same time, we had Reverend Mati Kudu, who we used to call Kudumi, as the headmaster of Presec. It was like there were 2 schools on one campus, the Science College and the Presec. But we became one school when we slept in the same room and ate in the same dining hall. Now, the 6th form Science College was 2 sections. We had 6 sets made up of 24 students in one set. We had 4 biology classes or in a 6 sets, and then we had 2 math classes in the 2 sets. Chemistry, biology, and then this is chemistry, math, and general paper. Our year group, when we came to Presec, were the first group that brought girls onto the Presec campus. So you can just imagine what happened. We had 18 good science girl students who joined us in 1975. So Presec became more or less like a mixed school. We broke the history. But these girls were in Accra girls during the first year. So Papa, the school driver, go to pick them up every morning and drop them in the evening. But in the second year, when we were in upper six, they came to live on campus for the first time. We had girls on Presec campus. So Presec at the time had this normal sixth form school. And like I said, Reverend Mate Kojo was then the headmaster. With a strong foundation that was established by the Sixth Form Science College in 1975 has seen Presec through and has brought Presec so far in the science and maths quiz we see today. Kudos to the Science College established by the government in 1975. We became the pioneers of the Science College.
Wow. Thank you. Well, thank you very much. The Science College has been phased. The mixed school girls have been phased out, and the Science College was also phased out in 1996. You know.
Your line is breaking.
Your line is breaking as well. But can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Yes, I'm saying that the Science College concept was phased out in 1996. You know, and of course, it produced some of the best A-level science students all over Ghana. You know, in fact, there was a time where people said the medical school was Presec Annex, you know, because of the overwhelming majority of students who were products of Presec. You know, now, today we are 85, and we are still flying, you know, very high in our science. And as we all witnessed, we won the 7. You know, we are going on for the 8th. You know, but Sinakoli, when you were here during those days, as a new student or somebody who had come from outside, how did you see the Presec campus?
You see, when the first time I entered the campus, when I saw the houses, I couldn't believe these were houses that students were living in. Because I know houses to be story buildings and things like that. I saw this, I said, hey, these people are just living in chicken coops or what? But when I went into the houses, and my first night I slept there, I said, what? More air conditioning.
Yes.
Plenty of air. Yes. The rooms were airy. And I tend to love the place.
Wow.
Secondly, when we came, because our batch had Adisada College students, Achimota students, Prempeh College students, I mean students from all over the big schools. So when we came and joined Presec, we changed the face of Presec totally. Because we came with various disciplines from various schools. You know, and then we come to a school where you can just walk off to Medina, walk through to IPS, and nobody, no other boundaries. You could just go to town any time and come back. Although the rules were there, we never lived up to the rules. But when we came, at least we brought some change. We brought some change, and we ensured that the rules were obeyed. You know, because some of us were the no-nonsense type. You know, we will punish you. We will punish you if you break the rules. So at least we changed the face of the free life style on campus.
Okay, so thank you very much, Sinakoli. For lack of time, so we'd like to just take some quick messages and then maybe ask our panelists a few questions before we round up.
Yeah, but Zonda, before we do that, since Senior Koli mentioned the Science College, I just want to put on record that the Science College, ỌDADEƐ Emmanuel Obinyante, was very instrumental. He was then the Commissioner for Education, Youth and Culture. He was very instrumental in getting the Science College to Presec, together with Nana Adodankwa at that time, who is also an ỌDADEƐ, and then General Kufu, who was then, I think, Chief of Defense Staff in the then military government before he became the head of state. So we want to recognize the work of these 3 ỌDADEÄs in pushing the project to Presec.
Okay, thank
Thank
you. So we have some quick messages. This is from ỌDADEƐ Alex Darkon. And he's asking if any of the panelists remember Isaac Adonuvo and Isaac Brown, who would have completed Dumasi between 1945 and 1950. Does anybody remember Adanuvo? Yes. Adanuvo. Yes. And he said
It was ESPED at the time I was there, actually.
Okay.
We were then 1955. He was ESP in this final year, if I remember him correctly. A shortish man, very articulate and very disciplined. That's the recall about him. This is Lade Osono. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's a message also from Samuel J. Mante, who says, I think this is to Prof. Would you have been my dad's classmate, the late ỌDADEɛ Josiah Ajimai Mante? He finished in 1955.
I finished in 1949.
Oh, well, and I'm sure you're talking about Professor Wosonu.
Yes.
Do you remember any Josiah Ajimai Mante?
It wasn't yesterday, but I think I do.
We understand. We understand.
Yes.
We understand.
He was quite tall. And yes, she was a very close friend of Akufo, General Akufo.
Okay.
I remember him now.
Okay.
They both come from the same place in Akropong, if I remember correctly. Yes, he's the one. The last time we went to visit Akufo in this place, he was part of the team. We went to visit Akufo in the army campus. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, and then
excuse me.
Yes, go ahead.
General Akufo was my student in Standard 6 in Akropong.
Oh.
In 1950. Wow. 4950. And we did get to know each other when he was in the army.
Wow.
So I remember him very well.
Wow, that's nice.
I even remember his sitting place in Akropong Boys Secondary School to the left of the window.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
We have network. We have serious
Yes.
network. And then
We used to play this together. We took part in the She Stoops to Conquer, and she played the part of the female main character. Very articulate, very presentable, and always disciplined, and a man of great character. It's a pity we had to lose him the way we did. He's so rest in peace.
Wow.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We have our global president on the line now. He's going to, of course, tell us a little bit about. He's now our leader, so this celebration that we are going through now, he's going to tell us a little bit about it and also, give us some message for the whole of our fraternity. Global President, you are welcome to ỌDADEƐ Radio.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, sir. Yes, so we are discussing ỌDADEƐ at 85, and we have some senior ỌDADEƐs with us. And as our leader, we just wanted to hear a word from you on our celebration and the future, what it holds for Presec.
Right. Thank you for having me on your program. Primarily, Presec at 85. The theme for Presec at 85 is building on a legacy of excellence. We all know the excellent performance of Presec over the past years. So I'm happy that this year's team is building on the legacy of Presec. Presec at 85, the very first program was what we embarked on, that is just 2 days ago, a tour to our old site, that is the old school Presec Odumase premises.
Presec was set up in the year 1938, and for 30 years, that is where Presec was. That is from 1938 to 1968. After 30 years, Presec was moved to Legon. We were there, and frankly, I must say, it was very interesting. To me, when it comes to education, I would say probably I was in my hometown for the very first time. I really enjoyed the place, not for what it is now, but for the fact that I had been to a place that I've very much longed to be. And I think I will entreat on most old students to go there, at least to have a feel of the place, what the place looks like, and understand our roots. We're back to our roots to understand the essence of this year's theme, that is building on a legacy of excellence. When you talk about legacy, you talk about something that you've inherited. What have you inherited? From where have you inherited that thing? You've inherited a certain form of excellence in terms of educational standards, and that was inherited from Kobodumase. And I felt so proud being at the place. Presec Identity would be held at the later part of this year. Next month, or even, I think between this month and next month, the commemoration week, we would have a bonfire and a few other activities. And then from there, we would carry on and then have our final event somewhere in September, October this year. I would ask that each and every Presecant, wherever you are, whether in Ghana or in the diaspora, to contribute his quota towards the success of this program. There's a need for us to give back to what Presec has given us.
Yes.
In terms of what we've gained as officers of the school, where we are today as leaders of society, where we are today as products of Presec, where we are today as being proud as being in Presec. To me, there's no school and there's no place like Presec. So if that is so, then I think we need to contribute our quota as officers of Presec to help build on this year's team, that is well built on that legacy of excellence.
Global President, it was suggested when Siniado was narrating the trip that you went on to the old Presec grounds, and he mentioned that it had been suggested that we make 1st February a Presec Founders Day, just as we have other schools like Achimota having their Founders Day. What do you think, and how can we make this a reality?
I think it's right. From what I saw, I think 1st February each year should be set aside as Founders Day. And I'm sure, even for the students who went there, I'm sure what they saw, the experience was awesome. And like I said, I would encourage everyone to be there. Let us set aside 1st February of each day as a Founders Day. And then let us organize some form of a trip to the place. Not pilgrimage. When they say pilgrimage, I don't agree with them.
Okay.
Let's go and see our roots.
I recollect that the old baobab tree that was at the old grounds was cut down, and a new one has been planted here in Presec. Me as a Presec, and I don't know where that is, but I'm wondering why, for all this while, I don't know, it's maybe somebody's doing it, I don't know, but why we don't have our history written? And
Why we don't have what?
our history written. And, you know, some of our old students are still alive, and some of them can recount some of the stories. I'm just wondering, you know, if we could really embark on writing Presec history for our, you know, the yet unborn and those who are yet to come to Presec to come and read about it. So whilst we have Founders Day, we also have Presec history that people can read about.
I think that is where we fall short. You are right. Why don't we have our history written down? When I was at the event, the current head was Ojija. Made a lot of, what do we call it? In his speech, he made us know a lot of history about Presec. And I told him that, look, Mr. Headmaster, I think in future I would have to come to you and then guess one of these things. Guess what? There were letters that were written way back that he had copies. It was very interesting. So I think at this juncture, there's a need for us to write a history about Presec. At this time, there's a need to let a lot of the ỌDADEƐs know our history. There's even that confusion as to whether the founder of Presec is Reverend Clark or even Reverend Eggman. One group of people say that it's Reverend Eggman. Another is saying it's Clark. Which is which? It's about time that we dig into our history and you know the truth. How Presec was formed. When a rich group of people, though we may know, but we may not know the actual details. So it's important that we pay pilgrimage to the school and understand the true history of the school. We are all proud being Presecans. And if it is so, let's, going forward, let all ỌDADEÄs, for that matter, let all Presecans know where we came from, where we got into, and how we came about, for that matter.
I want to make
Okay, Mr. President. Okay. Mr. President, before you leave us, 15 years from today, Presec will be 100 years. What do you envisage Presec to be at our centenary anniversary?
I envisage Presec to be solely and totally ahead of all secondary institutions in the country. You see, we are completely taking a commanding lead in terms of second cycle education in the country. And I'm sure in 15 years' time, we'll establish ourselves as true leaders of even African education in terms of second cycle education. We have a lot to achieve, and we are capable of achieving that goal. That goal which will make us come out distinctively as the best institution in our country, Ghana, and even the best institution within West Africa. So, to me, Presec has a very bright future, and I'm sure, like I said, our team for this year is building upon a legacy of excellence. If we really want to build on that legacy, we'll be the best. We'll establish ourselves as the best, and we shall be the best.
Sina Sam, I'm going to ask a question.
Yes. So my contribution was this history and documenting the history of Presec is very, very important, because I think before the trip to Odumase, I circulated a speech that was written or given by Dr. N.T. Clark as part of the Dacha Klufio Engman lecture series, and Dr. Clark very vividly took us through the history of Presec, and that document was very, very impactful for me and for a lot of people who read it. So my recommendation is, as part of Presec 85, we should come up with a project that would have some of our historians get together and write the official history of Presec. Now that our fathers like Professor Ansre are still with us, they can get first-hand information. So my appeal to our global president is, if you can make that a priority and make that in Presec at 85 this year, we will have a written account and history of Presec from Odumasi all the way to current day. So if our if our global president can commit to doing that as a project, I think that would be helpful. And then once that document is written, that should be something that should be given to all the Presec students before they pass out, before they go out of the school or they graduate from the school. So they'll have a paper book that has the Presec as part of their exit out of Presec. So that is just my humble appeal.
Mr. President, before you leave, any surprise from Global for the school for the 85th anniversary in terms of the e-library?
Yes, before I answer that, let me reply to what Senior Samado just asked. Now, the trip to Ogumasi has given me a very good insight into who we are and what or where we came from. And I believe as the global executives, we have to develop that passion to let people understand that Presec was originally from Odumasi, and for that matter, we need to understand our history. So we build on that history. So I just want to assure you of that. Now, with respect to 1985, with respect to the 85th anniversary, I want to assure you that before the event, now e-library, the building itself, that is the exterior, will be fully completed. We're working towards that. We may not be able to complete the interior, but the exterior will be fully completed, at least to give it some form of facelift. And then let people understand that we are on course and we intend to complete the whole project. We are working seriously towards that. There's been a few delays here and there. Now, much apart from that, we're also working towards, that is aside the e-library, we're also working towards giving the whole school a new infrastructure in terms of re-asphalting the whole streets, both the main roads and then the feeder roads within the school, that is small roads, including certain portions that are currently dusty roads. So I want to ensure all and sundry that by September or by October, when the 85th anniversary will be held, the school will look different in terms of infrastructure. And when it comes to e-library, we would have made a lot of headway in terms of completing the building itself, not the expenditure, but the building itself. And that's what I want to assure all those students.
All right. Thank you very much, Global President, for
Global,
your submission, and we look forward to the 85th celebration. We are running out of time, but let me just read a couple of messages, and I'll come back to our panelists here. Samuel J. Mante was wondering if the senior old boys remember any staff who was brought from Odumasi here, if there was anything like that. It said there was the likes of Mr. Shali from the catering section, I don't know. And Gotsin Benny Bensu, 81, says, we salute the staff at Odumasi, especially for their sacrifice and devotion. Against all odds, they nurtured Presec despite difficulties and has made a mark on Ghana and beyond. It's been 2 hours. The story is still interesting, and I know that Professor Ansre, let me just say thank you, a special thank you to you for coming all the way to our studios to just share and reminisce with us. We are very, very grateful. We also have.
But Zonda,
Yeah.
before you sum up,
Yeah.
I want to ask Prof. Usono and Prof. Ansre and possibly Senior Dodo, why did it take the Presbyterian Church so long before they established their first secondary school? Why did it take so long? They were just focusing on training college and middle school. Why did it take so long?
I think that the
Could I, that was done before my time, but what I do know is that I was inspired by those who kicked against the goad. When they established, they were decentralized. They have the leaders of the church. They said, no, in addition to the training college, we shall have a secondary school. And even though they were not actively supported by the Scottish group, they went ahead and did it regardless of that support, because they were convinced it was the right thing to do, and they did it. And I must thank very much the global president for his very inspiring speech. And I'd like to suggest, I want to be a record for suggesting this thing. You mentioned about being a leader in Africa as an education establishment in Africa. May I make a plea, please, that let us remember our mother tongue. Let us remember our mother tongue. If Presec can adopt and suggest, this is to the global president, please, that we will suggest that Ghana has a mother tongue day. If it coincides with February 1, so much the better. And so Bangladesh, who brought this into the world, that because of them, they have a UNESCO mother tongue day universally, but no other country has their own. If Ghana can have it, that is how to bring excellence in education, by being proficient in your mother tongue. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay, Prof, I think you are
yes.
going to add
Well,
something.
as far as mother tongue is concerned, in my time, you had to do the mother tongue as one of the compulsory subjects in the school. Bible knowledge,
Exactly.
English, mathematics, and your mother tongue. And it was doable at the time, mainly because most of the students had come from more or less the southern sector of Ghana, and and so there was Twi, there was Ga, and there was Ewe. At that time, people from the north of the country did not come to the school, and therefore it was doable. Now, I'm not saying that it is not doable now, it's still doable, but the mentality which says something like Brofuyedru has overtaken our national sense of belonging. And that's a very big topic. But in terms of development,
Sir, can change that.
Pardon me? Okay.
Yeah,
now,
go ahead.
I'm saying this really as a linguist.
Yeah.
That a nation develops when the language they use best is the language in which they think and mathematicize and scientize. So that we are in a great mess at the moment, the way we are handling English as the medium of instruction and the subjects that we have deleted from our elementary and secondary school level. It has to be taken all over again, because the linguistics of the nation determines its future development, whether scientifically, intellectually, or what have you. So I think that the mother tongue is a very important one, but Presec alone cannot handle it. The Presbyterian Church alone cannot handle it. It's a national issue. As far as the history of Presec is concerned, what people do usually is to sit down and get a committee consisting of an intellectualized, or university historian personality, and we can get a good historian from
the ỌDADEɛ calibers that we have here, and set a small committee, but the main writer should be almost the one person who will do the editorial work of what is already existent and what can be added to it, and he should be given a dateline by which he should finish the job in hand. And then we have a volume 1 of the Presec history, because the history will go on and on and on. Some of us who were asked to do the history of my church, the EP Church, 25 years ago, were asked to do it this time again, 175th anniversary. So it will not be one document, but it will be a growing documentation and a developmental approach to the history of Presec and what it has contributed to the nation.
He asked a question concerning why it took
Yes.
Presec so long.
Now, I think that it was sensitivity to the needs of the time. If you remember, before 1940, the majority of educated people went into either trade with the companies, UAC, UTC, and so on, and some went into teaching, and some went into agriculture, but the level of Africans needed at that time was just elementary school almost. The church itself had a tradition of higher education, but the European sourced churches such as the Basel Mission and the Bremen Mission did not have the typical English American mentality about secondary schools. They went to schools. The German tradition is an academy. You finished, you went to the academy, and then you went to the university. So the secondary school system which the Anglican Church had, and which the Methodists had, was typically British. If you came from Switzerland and Germany, you did not have the kind that came much later in the 1930s. But they also were producing Christian men who would either service the church as teacher catechists or pastors, and they were sending their pastors to be abroad. And if they went to the University of Switzerland, like Richter and Baeta, they had the traditional European system of education. It was not until our people began to be more anglicized in the 1920s, 30s, that people like Engman and so on began to see the English system of secondary school education after primary and then university after secondary as a systemic way in which Ghana would go. This is why the Anglicans had started. Actually, the Catholics also had their St. Augustine, and the Methodists had the Mfantsipim. But when people from Mfantsipim finished, the church did not feel responsible for them. They went into the civil service. But when people finished in the Presbyterian schools, the church was responsible for them, and they encouraged them into teaching until the teachers themselves began to feel, like Clufio and Baetas and so on, that the school certificate and the London school matriculation was necessary for further education. Fortunately for some of us, by the time it came to our time in 1940, 45, 46, 47,
the University of the Gold Coast, University College of the Gold Coast, had begun. And that's when a lot of Presbyterians headed for the British type university system. And many of our teachers went to Europe and to England. Clark, who was this, not Clark, at this supervisor of schools of the Presbyterian Church, also for Clark, the son of Nicholas Clark, himself studied in America with Mr. Ansa, who was the supervisor of schools, went to Tuskegee. The other people went to Bremen and so on, and only later did they discover London and the British system. And when they covered the British system in the late 30s, that's when they really began to argue for secondary school in the Presbyterian system. Their fathers
Thank you very much.
were studying in Scotland and in Hamburg and in Basel and other places.
Thank you very much. Thank you very
This
much.
is this is very good insight
Yeah.
into
Yes.
why
Okay.
Presbyterian delayed secondary education. Very
Okay,
good.
so
Thank you so
we
much,
have
Prof.
Reverend Prof. Philip Lai,
Oh,
who
yes.
wants to add a very quick word before we close. Prof. Lai, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Yes. So you are on air on ỌDADEƐ Radio. We are discussing Presec at 85. If you can just quickly give us your memory of when you came into Presec and your experience.
What do you mean?
I'm saying that if you can give us a quick recap of your experience in Presec when you came here in 76.
Oh, yeah, I was in Presec from 1971 to 1976. We came in September 71, and I was initially placed at Clark House, but I moved to Kwanzaa after a reshuffle. So I lived until 76 when we left. So that's a brief, background of my own pilgrimage at Presec.
So I guess when you came into 71, you had met some of the students who had come from Odumasi here.
Yeah.
Do you recollect?
Yes.
Do you recollect any of them?
Yeah, I mean those who came from Odumasi and they came to Form 2. My seniors, when they were in Form 5, were in Form 1. Currently my boss at where I now work, the Akron Crystal Institute, Reverend Professor Kwashi, when we were in Form 1, they were in Form 5. Reverend Professor Pobi, who is at the Trinity Theological Seminary, they attended the old Odumasi Form 1 and then they continued in Form 2. So those we met who had a taste of Odumasi were then in Form 5.
Okay, so we are actually running out of time, and so I'd like to say a very thank you to
Senior Zonda.
Yeah.
So Reverend Lai, Prof, this is your classmate Samado.
Oh, Sam.
Yes. So Prof, yes, I think as we spoke yesterday, can you give us a brief history of how the land at Legon was acquired? I think you have some unique insights into that. Yeah, thank you.
I think it would take some time. Since yesterday, actually, I've been pouring on documents relating to the establishment of Presec. I believe that quite a lot of the documents that I've seen, perhaps a lot of people have cited them. You're talking about from early 1930s, so right from the very beginning, the church authorities never really had in mind citing Presec as the original place. They called the minutes would often refer to permanent they use the word permanent site. So right from the very beginning, they knew it was a temporal location, temporal setting. So there was this debate about where to site it, and that has led to a lot of controversy. The Dami people were prepared to give a site. Indeed, at some point, the Kono, gave a place at Nuaso to Bong. But then the Ghana people also gave a place at Christianborg. It was between La and Peshin, a site between Peshin. Eventually, they accepted a committee's proposal for the place where Presec is currently located. And it was the people of the La Manche who actually gave us this land. And I recall having a conversation with Aaron Kwanta, who was in the clerk, at the time. So he was very instrumental in the relocation of the site. I read in the minute something very interesting. The controversy was so serious that in 1948, the old Students Association, an association had already been formed in 1948. Can you imagine that 10 years after Presec had been formed, 1948, old students wrote a petition on this controversy. I'm yet to cite the actual petition they sent. But the ministry records that they gave some, advice on what should be done. And there are quite a lot of things that I came across. But I think that we would have to have time to be able to really delve into all that. And I believe that when the comprehensive history is written, a lot of these things will have to be processed and then be part of the true story.
Yeah, Prof. Lai, we'd like you to find time and come to the studio so that you can come and talk about some of these things, because the commemorative anniversary will start the third week of February and will run into March. So this February is all Presec history, Presec anniversary, Presec birthday. So we'll touch base with you. Senior Sam will arrange so that we come to the studio and come and share some of these things with us.
Sure. I'll love to do that.
So Edifico, do you realize the importance and why I've been pushing you that we should have a historical program and then you should be hosting this program? We don't even have enough time. We don't have enough time. But you can say we have such a rich history and there are so many people who we should tap into for them to give us a history of Presec. And you are an encyclopedia, you are a historian. You must start this whole process.
Like our senior, our daddy said, we need a committee to be formed, and then when global president has bought into the idea, let's get the committee formed, and then let's get all the materials. Professor Lai and all the rest will come on board, and then we commission, like Professor Anstre said, someone from Legon or somewhere to just do the final editing. Then the volume 1. If the volume 1 comes out, Presec at 100, volume 2 will come out in that order. At least.
Okay, let me quickly acknowledge, especially those in the studio right now. As we round up, I want to say a very big thank you to Professor Anstre. At his age, he's still here with us, committed to ΟΔΑΔΕΕ. And so, Prof, thank you so much for spending time with us.
Professor Anstre is with you at the studio?
Yes, he is with us at the studio.
Oh.
Yes.
Kindly greet the old man for
yes.
me.
Philip, I greet you as well, and I greet you warmly.
Oh, this is my father. This is my father.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Also, Prof, I think that we'll find time, as I told you earlier on, to bring you to the studio, and we can have good discussions. Professor Anstre, you have been so gracious. And we are grateful. The whole of Presec, we are grateful. We thank you very much.
Well, I'm very grateful to you all and to Presec.
And I also want Prof. Wosono to come to the studio and come and tell us how, from a medical practitioner, he went into become a great poet and his literary works. That transition always beats my mind.
Yes.
He was a
Thank you very
medical
much,
guy,
DJ.
and then from medical, all the surgeries found his way into poetry and writings. So, Professor
Thank you very
Wusono,
much.
I tried to get your son to bring you for an interview. Your son was tossing me here and there. He said today, he said tomorrow. But now I'm appealing to you. Let's fix a date. Then you come and tell us how you became a medical doctor and then recognized all over the world. Anywhere we mention your name. Just yesterday, I was talking to a doctor and I said, Prof. Wusono will be coming on our program. I said, wow. When I got to Lagos Medical School, I heard his name.
Yo, Fico, let me end the program. I beg you. Let me end the program. Professor Shrey is tired. He wants to go home. So very quickly, allow me to do my thank yous first, Fico.
Okay, I hear you.
Yes, thank you, Senior Samado, for also coming to spend the time with us and narrating the trip to Dumasi. Thomas Ansre, who drove his father here, has been with us in the studio. Thomas, thank you very much. And we have a very silent guest who I won't mention his school, but thank you very much, Mr. Prince Akwoku, yes, who is in the studio with us. His brother is Duke Akwaku Breakspear, our mate, 1981. He's been in the studio with us here. I also want to thank Lawyer Na, Professor Wosonu, Senior Gustav Mate Azu, Senior Okan Okante, Dr. Ernest Ofore Sapon, Reverend Professor Philip Lai, Odadie Akute Azu, Herbert Oswald Wodu, and Senior Kweku Coleman, who were all on Zoom and on the phone line. We thank you all for joining us to make this program what it has been. We hope we'll bring you more as we celebrate Presec at 85. And thank you all for tuning in and listening. This has been your host, Johnny Adufening, my co-host, Edifico, all the way from New York, and Senior Sam Ado. Our producer has been DJ Otu, DJ Yus, Joseph Otu. Thank you very much. This is ΟDΑDEƐ Radio. Who? Yes. Figo, can you give us a last word before we go, since we want you to close the program for us, Figo?
Yeah, so I mean, we look back and we thank God, like Professor Wosonu said, God has been good to us. As at 85 years, we have taken our places in the future of our church and country. And we are still doing that. Like Senior Dodu said, we feel so proud wherever we are, we distinguish ourselves, and we'll continue to do that. Like our global president said, 15 years from now, Presec at 100 years, we should have made an impact all over the continent of Africa and beyond. We wish Presec a happy birthday, and all the teachers, tutors who have sacrificed over the years, made great sacrifices under certain conditions just to push us through. We give them all the salute today. God bless you all, and we hope to continue to research our history, and as we get fulfillment from learning about what this school has given to us, Presec has given to us, it's time to us to give back to Presec in whatever way we find ourselves. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Bye-bye.
So this has been ΟDADEƐ Radio, Presec at 85. Thank you all for tuning in. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Research our history, and as we get fulfillment, learning about what this school has given to us.
Are we, studios are we, students of Presbyterian Secondary School, onward we march, we trudge along to happy victory, to victory, to victory. Our motto is a song.
ỌDADEÄ Radio. Like us on Facebook at ỌDADEÄ Radio. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at ỌDADEÄ Radio.